Hello everyone. So this is an Ari, and if this is sort of your first video of mine, or first time you've seen one of my 6 factions, 6 decks videos, the idea is I give a deck for each faction, and yeah, because I know when it comes around to a new season, especially when there's been like changes as big as this one, sometimes hard to know what to play for each faction, especially if you've got pro rank for the first time or whatever, and you have to adjust to that playing 4 factions to get a decent ranking. Uh, and as always, sort of preface this by saying like these are things that I'm going to be trying. Um, they're probably not absolutely perfect, super refined. Definitely room for you to make changes. I'm not saying these are the best decks around or anything like that. They're just kind of a jumping off point for you. These are the things I'm personally going to be trying out. And if you have success with it as well, that'd be great. So probably won't ramble on too much and get into the decks. If you're unaware of what the changes were, I did a video a couple of days ago that sort of was my first impressions of the changes they announced on the open stream, and also the patch notes will be up and it'll be live in the game now. So yeah, all the stuff's out there. If you want to know more about the changes that were put in place, because there's been absolutely tons for this season. So we shall start with monsters. So new leader ability, move an enemy unit to the other row and spawn frost. So I really like this. Um, I think monsters probably got hit the hardest with the changes. They're really going to struggle this season, which is a bit of a shame because I feel like they were in a healthy spot. Maybe a little bit strong, but nothing super bad. I think they were just strong. But obviously, Ethereal's been killed off. Auberon's been nerfed. Aneromancy's been nerfed, and so yeah, monsters not having a great time. So the list I'm gonna try, I would say that probably the best deck at the moment is probably the old Horn Auberon list. I'm sure it will take you 2 seconds to find that online. I think you probably have to adjust that now because of the changes and everything, but I just wanted to try something new. I think I don't like to just show a deck that was just competitive last season, and just be like, yeah, run the same thing. Uh, may as well show something new, and if you no interest in the deck, you know where to find all the other stuff. So nothing lost there. So in this, I've gone for a sort of wild hunt list, and I know that was being run before, like with a overwhelming hunger to with like a Caranthea and like not overwhelming hunger, Death Shadow, sorry, onto Auberon and things like that. Uh, and the general idea of this is get dominance, get frost down, deal a load of damage, point slam. That's it's not too complex of a list. So it works around using things like again in round one to ensure your dominance and using like your bronze engines, and I realised that Drowner's in there. Don't know how a Drowner got in the list. That should be another, if I could find it, another Bruiser, because Bruiser's just more or less better than Drowner here. Anyway, general idea of like playing again and your Thrive engines like in Lava, Bruxa, uh, in like the early rounds, try and win round one. Monsters have a pretty good time when it comes to winning round one, especially on red coin. They can really abuse red coin. And then transitioning that to a really good round three with sort of cards like, you know, if a beast can get going, you've got Oswald to consume you again in graveyard. If you can maintain dominance, Eridin to spawn Frost, dealing more damage, synergizes with your leader ability. You can pretty consistently get the Winter Queen out of your deck with this leader ability as well, being able to spawn the Frost. And it's not too complex of a deck in general. You're just kind of looking to win round one, point slam, get a load of Frost down. That's basically it. There is sort of room for considering, do you want to use your Winter Queen in round one? Like, just play it like Argaith, get Winter Queen down for more pressure to ensure you win round one, or do you hold on to the Winter Queen in your deck so that you can get a bit more power in round three? So that's kind of, I guess, the only area where there's like flexibility and it depends from game to game. But I do think monsters are going to struggle this season, definitely. So next up we have Nilfgaard, which I think is, again, another one not in a great spot. I wasn't in a great spot last season. There's been a few changes that have negatively impacted it. There's definitely sort of a lot of discussion around Vincent's changes, and I won't go into it too much, but I will say I don't think Vincent is broken. Despite what Reddit thinks. So yeah, I think you're really going to struggle with Nilfgaard this season if you give it a run. But the list is just a very typical thing you'll have seen before: a double ball, an Aeromancy, Usurper, Brathens, Yennefer's Inver, that sort of thing. Just play ball one round, win it. A Sire to get ball back in your deck, and then play it in another round to win again. Obviously not that simple during a game, but it's basically relying on using a lot of poison, a lot of removal, and I prefer using lockdown. I think you have a lot of flexibility with Nilfgaard at the moment with the leaders, because pretty much all the leaders are like playable. I haven't tried new Imperial Formation or Imprisonment or Tactical Decision, but by and large, I think maybe Double Cross is not as good if you're not playing Assimilate, but I think basically any leader and you're looking okay with this. And as I say, I think it's probably not in the most competitive position, Nilfgaard, but this is probably the direction you want to go if you are dead set on playing Nilfgaard. So next up, we've got Northern Realms. So Northern Realms, Northern Realms, Northern Realms, Northern Realms. I saw straight away when I saw Shield Wall. It's like this is going to be stupid. Whether that's a bit of an overreaction from me and everyone else, I don't know. But I think this is definitely going to be very strong. So it initially doesn't look that big of a deal. Shield Wall, boost unit by 2, give it shield, 3 charges. It's basically like Carapace was for monsters, and Carapace just saw no play for monsters. But the key reason why this is so much better on Northern Realms is how valuable having a shield actually is. So if you imagine, say you play your Antaeus with a shield deals 12 damage in a duel before it even takes any damage. So not a lot that's going to survive Antaeus. And you really, really like having this sort of access to putting a shield on and engines can't be removed. And it, well, I say it can't be removed, makes it a lot harder. And being able to sort of combo this with any of the ridiculous things you're running means that these things stick and you just kind of can go off. So the idea I kind of had building this, was what do we want Shield Wall to work on? And so things like Antaeus really good. I thought Visgotta probably works really well because the only problem Visgotta has is that it's 3 power and really easy to remove. Really, really easy to remove. Before you could go like Donomir and pincer maneuver to get like Visgotta down, and it's protected, it's behind a defender, it's all done in one turn. You're free to go off and keep spiraling out of control with it. However, now with Shield Wall, Visgotta now can be a 5 power unit with a shield. That's definitely awkward for your opponent to remove. We've also got Donomir to keep it safe, and it's much safer to play. and it very quickly will get out of hand if a Vizgota can stick for even 2-3 turns. I mean, if he sticks for 3 turns, he's basically played for 9. If he sticks for the whole game, I don't even want to do the maths on that. You're looking at sort of the mid-teens, and including the benefits that you get from using boost in NR. But apart from that, it's a pretty standard list. It's more or less the uprising list that was roaming around and was pretty good last season. So diversion using Vraxus, Baron, Ansea, Sedalia, Anna, that sort of thing. I think the only sort of interesting change I made was putting in Wyndham. So Wyndham, I actually kind of like because your opponent has to invest damage to stop this engine going, and if it does, you always have access to using Shield Wall to get this straight back online. And if he's using anything more than 1 damage, then the shield's kind of worth it. Because even if the shield is removed straight away, he's played for 6, so slightly below provision cost, not good. If it can even go 2 turns with the shield on, perfect. It's played for 7, and it's just going to keep going. And you always have the option, provided it hasn't been killed, of just playing shield wall back onto it. And so that's kind of why I liked it. I think that's why I put in Vizgota and Wyndham. Kind of like the idea of shield wall being able to make these much more playable and viable engines that your opponent really has to be scared of. And that's on top of all the multitude of engines that NR has access to, with things like Frigga and Anna. Yeah, it's definitely looking to be a very strong list. I think you're going to be seeing quite a bit of it on ladder, so I think it's definitely worth trying. So, scoia'tael. This is where I was kind of spoiled for choice when it came to scoia'tael because there's so many things I want to try with it. So for the new leaders, like Nature's Gift, Symbiosis is like a passive ability, which is something I've kind of been going on about. Like I've really wanted that for Symbiosis, for it to be bundled in, kind of like how Mahakam Forge is, as like a passive one, just underlying. So really nice to see that, even if the order is kind of not good. So I was torn between doing a deck for either of these, and I think I ended up doing a Call of Harmony one. So it's more or less the Harmony list from way back when. Now some people think that Harmony's too strong, but I think more it was Mystic Echoes and What's a Broccolon that was kind of the issue. I've chosen to cut What's a Broccolon because I feel like it's good long term, but it's very dependent on you being able to stick those 2 Dryads, and without the ability to replay it from your graveyard that Mystic Echo gave, I feel like it's just a little bit too less, little bit too little for its provision cost. So I've kind of gone with that list and used the provisions from this to put in a Forest Protector, float in a provision, so upgraded a Half Elf Hunter to a Dunker, chucked in some Abandoned Girls, and really just the sort of typical list you'll have seen plenty of times a few seasons ago before they changed Harmony. Because I think there's a lot of room for like flexibility when it comes to this deck, because you kind of need the poison package, so like Forest Whisperers, Rangers, Weeping Willow. You also kind of need the Tutor package and Great Oak, and probably Forv as well. But really everything else is your choice. Considering putting in a... Have I not got... I don't even think I've got... No, I don't actually have Synthesis. Could consider putting in Sethen. Right, I can't pronounce this. Synthesis, I think. You could consider putting this in for another tag because it's Dragon tag. Or you could consider maybe putting in some of the diversion cards. I've chosen not to. I think I would possibly consider maybe swapping out like Abandoned Girls for the Earth Critters, something like that. But it's much the same as it used to be, with the added bonus of the new cards from Master Mirror that are like semi-auto includes, so things like Forest Protector and Dunker to some extent. I'm probably going to be trying out this and the Symbiosis leader. I think the problem with Symbiosis will always be row size, so I think that's definitely that I'll need working around. And obviously the old Shiru lists will still be very viable. I don't think they've really lost anything in terms of power, so there's literally hundreds of lists out there for Shiru. I won't go over one here because I think you could just search Shiru in YouTube or whatever and find hundreds of videos, because you can go like the Skags route, you can go Devotion, you can just go the sort of like no huge investment in terms of like big stuff apart from like God and Shiru. There's plenty of ways you can play Shiru, so Shiru will always be good until changes come in for scoia'tael. So if you're not feeling any of the new leaders and you just want to play something you're used to, Shiru's definitely the way to go. So then Skellige. Um, I kind of feel bad about the changes that keep happening to Skellige. Like, I think Skellige has been like over criticized, especially since the last couple of rounds of nerfs, because I feel like last season it was in an okay position. Um, it was definitely beatable. Like, obviously when we think about how it was at release for Master Mirror, like that was way too strong and changes did need to come in. Um, but I feel like it was already in a good spot and they've kind of already dumped on it even harder. Um, so increasing Blood Eagles provisions, increasing Heralds, uh, changing Great Swords. Although I actually think this was a bit of a buff. So if you haven't seen, now Great Sword is 10, damages itself by 5, but heals itself every time there's damage. So it's almost like old Great Sword, but 1 power more, and it's capped at 10, which is really roundabout. But yeah, it does the job. And I think this is kind of good because a lot of the time, like, you're really risking going kind of all in if your great sword's getting like huge, getting up to like the 20-point range. So there's a lot of games, certainly that I've played with great swords, where they're getting to like the 7, 8, 9, 10 sort of range, and you're pretty happy with that. So capping it at 10, not that bad. Definitely not that bad. With the addition of it not being like green health, so things like Morkvarg won't kill it. It can't be reset down. Like if you reset a great sword, you either healing it or doing nothing. So I actually think this was a bit of a buff. So we're gonna have to see how that plays out. But I do like the change. I think it's was maybe necessary, but I do think it was a buff all in all. But the direction I decided to go with was try out the new Rage of the Sea, which is Spawn Rain and a Deafening Siren. So Rain is damage to random units on a row by 1, which is really good for setting up Bloodthirsts, giving you Wild Boar of the Sea value, those sort of things. And it's pretty much the sort of list you'll have seen before, with the whole warrior package. I did try a few games of running Dagger, but it felt a bit too all in. Um, and I kind of decided that I would rather have like a Hjalmar as just a bit more control. I think going the same traditional route with Skellige Warriors at the moment is probably the best direction to take it. Because you're already getting so many points from cards like Harold, Hemdall, Wild Boar of the Sea. Scoia'tael even comes down as 10, setting up your Anchorate Longships. And so yeah, I felt like it was a bit too much putting in the Dagger. As much as I would have loved to get Dagger in the list to work consistently, because I used to absolutely love playing Great Swords and Dagger before Master Mirror, but here we are. I think Hjalmar definitely works because although we're not playing Blitz of Glory, once Great Swords are in the graveyard, Hjalmar has access to like 10 damage. Um, things like your Tersiach Invader are like 7 points in the graveyard, so I think Hjalmar nearly always has a good target. So you don't really have to worry about him bricking. I mean, sure, round one, yes, he is more or less a brick, but you probably shouldn't be playing him round one. Um, so I think he's definitely a good like extra inclusion because if we're not running Patricide or Fury, then we don't really want to run the Bloodthirst cards like Madman Lugos and Champion's Charge. So we've lost two big removals there, and I think you kind of need Hjalmar in there for that little bit extra control. The one interesting one is probably the Dimon like Longship, but I kind of like this in the list. Just synergizes quite well with Great Swords and board, just setting up damage on the board. And because we're running like two berserkers, like Longship, Great Swords, I kind of liked putting in a couple of Heimei Protectors, mainly because they kind of remove the incentive for your opponent to try and damage these units or try and take them off the board because you still get those extra points from them dying. So I thought they were a good inclusion. They seem to have done quite well in the couple of games I played. So nothing too groundbreaking here. Just a few little things and a new leader. And so last one is arguably the most boring one. Is Hidden Cash Syndicate because nothing's really changed here. The extent of changes has been an Aeromancy gaining a provision cost, so you've got to make a little bit of a trim back somewhere. And so the trim back I did was I literally had the list and I took out, if I can find it, Philippa. Took out Philippa, put in Azar, good to go. One of the other changes I should probably mention is Ewald is like completely changed. So Ewald is now damaged by 2 if Horse in the graveyard damaged by 4. And Horson's Freak Shirt is now profit 2, fee 2, damage an enemy unit by 2. So Horson's Freak Shirt is basically the same as like old Ewald was. Like same provision cost, same power, same ability. Key thing is it's got 1 armor now. So I kind of like putting this in. Because Ewald before was good anyway, and Horson's Freak Shirt is like an ever so slightly buffed Ewald. So I think that's a good inclusion, and the general like game plan with this list is you're sort of running your poisons, and you just have absolute tons of engines. Like I think there's about a dozen engines or something like that, something ridiculous. And so you just try and set those up, hope that one sticks, and then sort of last play you're playing like Sea Jackal, Street Urchins to just spend all those coins that you've been hoarding up. Now the reason I removed Philippa is Philippa always sat weirdly with me in Hidden Cash, mainly because a lot of the time you're either wanting to set up like engines like MK, like Slice Ductress, like Passiflora Peaches, that are sort of relying on you having coins like ready to go. So like Passiflora Peaches need Hoard, MK and Slice Ductress having access to those 3 coins to put the shield on should you need it is really good. Obviously if we're running Horson's Freak Shirt, having access to dealing the damage is really good. And a lot of the time we're just not looking to spend coins, we're looking to save them all up, get to that sort of 7. 7's pretty much like the sweet spot for this list, 7 coins, and then spend them all right at the end. And Philippa can do that, but we have other cheaper methods of doing it. And of course, Philippa does represent like a ton of points, but sometimes you're kind of pushed into using it earlier, which means you can sometimes be making like your Soul, your Peaches, a little bit worse. So I didn't mind cutting out. I'd rather run Azar just to protect the engines instead. I think it's definitely something I'm going to be trying, but a cut had to be made somewhere, and unfortunately, Philippa was the one who got it. So I think that sort of rounds out the list. Don't think there was too much more I wanted to say on it. I think in terms of my predictions for what's going to be like strongest, I think we're still going to see, we're going to see Shield Wall dominating for quite a while. And I think Great Swords, Skellige, still pretty much fine. I think they're still very playable. So I think you're probably looking at sort of Syndicate, um, Northern Realms, Skellige, and maybe scoia'tael being like top four, like best factions. I feel like Nilfgaard's in a bad spot, and I feel like Monsters has been hit really hard. Probably a toss up between scoia'tael and Monsters for like the fourth faction spot. So I think that's all I had to say. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.